Hello everybody and welcome back to the Two Norries podcast. I am James Leonard and I'm joined by my good friend
Hi everyone.
Timmy Long. Rowan is always on the cameras and the sound, and this week my wife is the guest, Gillian Butler. How are you, Gillian?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
It's a family affair tonight. For the people who don't know you, where are you from? What's your name?
So for the people that don't know me, my name is Gillian Butler and I'm from Churchfield.
Yeah, and what school did you go to?
Churchfield, Marmalade School.
Marmalade City.
Yeah, it was once known as.
Do you remember I used to be called Marmalade City? What was that about again?
I think it was from what I heard. I think it was the teacher was after asking a child what marmalade was. I could be wrong.
Do you know what I heard?
Or something
I think
like that.
the school. Remember school around the corner? Yeah. School around the corner was down in Churchfield Primary School, and Jory Ryan asked one of the children, "Do you get marmalade for lunch?" And the child turned around and says, "What's marmalade?"
James,
Then,
I didn't know. I didn't
know what it's called, marmalade.
was as an adult.
we love jam.
Jam, yeah.
Jam or red sauce and bread, or sugar.
Bread and sugar as well was a thing.
Sugar, yeah.
Yeah.
But Marmalade City, so it's called Padre Pio.
Yeah.
And
That's actually just to show that is a fantastic school now at the moment.
Yeah.
The services what they do for young people, young kids, especially kids with any intellectual disabilities or anything like that. They're absolutely probably the best.
And that's great to hear.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a different school from the one that Seamus went to. Remember Seamus here? Lads, he didn't like that school. Yeah. But look, if you want to learn about that, go back and watch Seamus' podcast. But can you tell me a little about your family? Have you many brothers and sisters?
So I have 13 brothers and sisters altogether. I grew up with 6. There was 6 of us in the home, as in siblings. I'm from the travelling community. Dad is a traveller. I went to Churchfield School, as we've just talked about. Never really liked it. It was grand, I suppose. Look, it was better than secondary school. But when I say I never really liked it, like what child? I don't know any child that really loved school. You know, we all have different experiences there. But I never liked it. And my earliest memory is being pushed into a classroom, do you know, when I didn't want to be there, crying and just told to sit at a desk and, you know, just kind of left there crying. I didn't feel like I fitted in well.
Did you ever experience discrimination as a child because your dad was a traveller?
I don't, like, the honest answer to that now is, when I think back on it, yes, probably. But it was how I felt, knowing where I came from, because I knew the perception out there of people's thoughts or ideas around the travelling community. So I was well aware of society's views, let's say. And I carried that. I carried that through my childhood and into my teenage years and into my adult life, I suppose, until I really kind of got into recovery and started seeing things through a very different lens. I knew from a very early age
You were different.
travellers weren't liked by the majority. I knew that.
Does that make you feel like you're different to the rest of your friends?
Yes, I've actually, do you know, I suppose I've walked away from friendships that I thought were friendships because of comments that have been made, do you know, words like, I hate the words, but like knacker and things like that.
It's like being marginalised.
You feel like you're like someone's, like you're shit on someone's shoe, you know, that you're less than.
I think settled people will never understand, and to be honest with you, I never really understood the impact of that word until I started growing up with Gillian, you know, because it's such a prevalent word.
But people just throw it around like it's...
But it's
a lot of the time people don't, right, I can say, like I can honestly say, for a lot of the time people don't realise the impact that it has on someone from the travelling community. Because that word, I suppose, because I'm from the travelling community, it's loaded with a lot of negativity for me. And when I think of the experiences that my dad had as a child, and, you know, I suppose throughout his adulthood, and he has shared some of his stories with you as well, James.
Yeah.
Not very nice experiences, and that word represents all of that kind of stuff. And
I've been in company with you where that word would be thrown out, you know, and I'm very aware of it because of Gillian, and it's only then you really appreciate, you know, how hurtful a word can be. You know, so it was only really ignorance. A lot of it is ignorance as well. Like
it is, but you see, that's to a certain point. I accept that, but to a certain point, because when somebody becomes aware of the impact that word or that type of language, it's not just that word. There's other words as well that to be thrown around the place. But when people become aware of the impact that their language has on another group of people, they have a choice. Mm-hmm. They can change how they speak, or they can continue doing what they're doing, knowing the impact that they're having. And I suppose in the past I have walked away from people that I would have considered friends because they would have used that kind of type of language in my company, and I would have pulled them up in it and had a conversation, and then they would continue. A slip of the mouth, fair enough, but I have a choice then whether I'm going to associate myself with those people or not. So I removed myself from that.
I suppose that's fair enough.
Of course
it is fair enough. And I, like today, one of my best friends, like she's one of the closest people to me. When I first met her, she actually used that word. Mm-hmm. And I remember I said it to her, I was like, look, that word really affects me. That type of language really affects me, and it impacts on me. And we had a conversation around it, and she was so apologetic because she actually didn't realise it.
That's what I'm saying.
She did not genuinely realise it, and she never again used that word, certainly not in my company anywhere. And she was very mindful of the impact that had on me, and so apologetic, and best friend today.
I think that shows the difference between ignorance and racism.
That's what I'm saying. Like when I suppose when you're sitting down with somebody and you're having that conversation, explaining how it impacts on another group of people, then they have a choice. Are they going to continue using that type of language or those terms? Or are they going to say, do you know what, I don't want to be part of discriminating against another group. I don't want to be part of hurting another group when there's no need for it, you know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
But getting back to your own story, you didn't like primary school, secondary school?
Secondary school, I was just turning up really, but not all the time either. No, going back to primary school, just to mention, my mum actually pulled out a certificate there not so long ago.
Yeah, you were the best attendance for 3 or 4 years without missing a day.
Without missing a day.
That had nothing to do with the fact that the school was about 20 metres across the road.
To the school, like.
Roll out of bed and end up in the class.
And that's what we did, many of the morning, just roll out of bed and go to school. But then I went to primary school, and you've talked about it, and you've talked about it, the transition. You know, it's difficult. But then secondary school, I did not like that. I hated it. Didn't have any experience like that, no. But I just didn't want to be there. And I think I got to the end of first year, and then I was gone. But throughout that, you know, I was be on the hop in around the town, you know, messing around, and very innocent, like, in many ways. And
when you're in first year on the hop, you're only really about 13, like.
Yeah, I was. I'd been
children at 13 are very innocent, like, but you know, if you can imagine your daughter Timmy 13 doing that. 13 is a child as well, John, and that's very kind of abnormal behaviour for a child, isn't it?
At that stage, was there any use of substances or any kind of alcohol or drugs or anything like, do you know?
For me?
Yeah,
I suppose, look, I would have experimented, I suppose, at a very young age. And, but look, again, when I look back on it, it was all very normal. No, not that my parents condoned me doing those things. I'm not saying that wasn't the case. But I was able to have the sneaky drink here and there, and so that kind of, you know, the drinking really took off. So yeah, I was going to school, going on the hop a lot. And I suppose at a very young age I had a lot of responsibility as well, because I had to look after the younger kids in the family. So there was a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to escape that. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want that responsibility. So I started to rebel. Do you know? I started getting into trouble with the guards. They were taking me home.
Yeah. That's really around the age that...
I'd be going into the door with my hands over my head like that.
There were different times back then.
Yeah, and you get a few clatters or whatever, like, and then you'll be off again doing the same thing.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, if at that age when you are after finding ecstasy or whatever other drug or alcohol or whatever, and it's doing for something to you, like it's taking you away from all the stuff that's going on in your head or the emotions that you're not able to feel. It's normal. You're going to want to keep chasing these things. You know, you're going to need more because this is something that's really giving you something that you never had before, a little bit of self-esteem or confidence or love.
And it doesn't matter about the consequences either. Like, it doesn't matter if you're getting arrested or getting suspended from school. If it takes you away from the madness in your head, don't care about consequences, especially when you're young like that.
Yeah. So that kind of, that was kind of the start of it, really.
But you finished up after first year, was it?
It was around, I don't even know if I made it to, like, that. Them years are kind of a blur to me, to be honest, in terms of education. I don't even know if I made it to the end of first year, but it was either the end of first year or the beginning of second year, but I know that it didn't go any further than that. I left school, I was able to read and write. People used to always compliment my writing, especially my sister, Maria, who's no longer with us. But, so I took pride in my writing. So I was lucky that I did leave school with that. And then, as I said, things just kind of escalated, really. I started getting into a lot more trouble with the guards, bringing me home from town. I'd walk into Paul Street, myself and another girl that I used to be with at the time. And it was Quinsworth at the time, Tesco's. It was Quinsworth. And walk in, fill up a trolley full of food and just walk out. And I got away with that loads of times. Fill up a taxi with the food up home. And then I started getting caught for it, you know what I mean? Then, you know, getting arrested and getting warnings and all of this stuff. And eventually I was brought in front of a judge and sent to Oberstown. So that was kind of the start of it then, like.
How, like, we've often spoke to people about Oberstown. Like, you kind of caught me off guard there now as well, because I didn't know Oberstown was for young girls as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's mixed, yeah.
Is it?
Well, there's a male and a female part. Like.
I don't know what way it is today, like, but I mean...
and what age were you then, Gillian?
Oh, sure, I could have been 15, 16.
What was it like in Oberstown?
Remember, my first night up there was like... It was almost, I suppose, like a cell, but a nicer version of a cell. You put in there. I arrived late because you know the way it is with the courts. You're like, you could be seen at 10 o'clock in the morning. You could be first up, but you're there all day inside in the holding cells until the guards are ready to take you over to the Bible and then remove you or to bring you to Oberstown in my case. So I arrived there late and, I just remember they just brought me into a room, locked the door behind me. It was a comfortable room. Now, don't get me wrong. Asked me if I wanted food. I didn't want anything. And from what I remember of it, like, you had your freedom in terms of you could walk around the building, but then there was times you were in lock-up as well. And there was a big kitchen. I remember a big kitchen, and there was plenty of food there to be eaten. You know, it was like a residential home, for want of a better word, you know. So it was grand. I actually had no issues up there. I remember getting a phone call from my brother. My brother was down at Spike Island at the time. He was serving a sentence. And I suppose just to kind of, before I move on to that, I've heard you talk about the ambition to go to prison. That was my ambition too. And when I actually said it out loud, it's actually funny.
It's actually, I know it's...
I was just going to ask you that.
It's actually funny when I say it out loud, because everyone that I was surrounded with, they were all going to prison. Do you know, it was like the rite of passage. This is what you do. So the day it's in the court, myself and the other girl that I was up with, she's dead now, Lord have mercy on her as well. The plan was to get to Limerick prison. That was the plan. She was the same age as me, but she looked a lot older than me. And he sent me to Oberstown, so that was a bit of a shock to the system. I thought I was going to Limerick with her, because I had another family member up in Limerick at the time, so I was trying to get up there to them. So I ended up down in Oberstown, and I got a phone call. I don't know how the phone call came about, to be honest, but I got a phone call with my brother. And I remember him saying to me on the phone, "Don't take no shit now from no one down there or up there." And I was grand up until that point on the phone. And when he started talking like that, then he started sobbing on the phone. But I came off the phone for him, and he was like, "You'll be grand, no, just don't take no shit from no one." And I came off the phone from him, and I was walking down the hallway, And there was these two dubs sitting down, and they weren't even talking about me now, but of course I had to try and prove myself after coming off the phone to him. And they were talking amongst themselves, and I said, what the fuck are you talking about? Throw my weight around. They were like, we're not talking about you at all. So, and that was me kind of just affirming that I wasn't going to, but there was no one saying anything to me at the same time.
But it's like what Timmy talks about as well back in the days, it's just, if you have an aggressive demeanour, people will leave you alone, and
you have to. It's something that you build up. It's like a mechanism that you build up within yourself.
Behind all that, there was a shy child.
That's exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like there was a shy child behind all of that.
Full of fear, fearful.
Yeah,
full of fear.
Full of fear, and not knowing what the hell they were doing. There was no direction in life. I'd know, and I suppose when I talk like this, I just want to say as well, I'm not blaming anybody for anything.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like we were all in it together. Yeah. Like, I suppose when you know different, you can do different. But at that point, we were all on the same road, do you know, so nobody kind of knew any better. And I suppose on that note, there was nobody, there was nobody that I could look to and think, Jesus, I'd love to do what they're doing in terms of education or working or not going to prison. Do you know, that wasn't part of my world at that time. So, yeah, eventually anyway, I was remanded there for a few weeks, and I was brought in front of the judge again, and I was released. I remember my mum was inside the court waiting for me. I was there. I'm dead when she gets me. But she got me home and grand for a while, and then I was gone again. Do you know, I just didn't want to be there. It was just, I suppose it was just too difficult to be there. And yeah, the guards and the drink and the drugs and the fighting and a vicious circle, really.
Just kind of escalated at that age and just went mental.
And then prison.
Yeah, and I suppose...
Then I made it to the big girls' prison, eventually. Do you know?
That's a different level then. You're going...
Yeah.
It's a different level of stuff.
17, 18, I suppose. 18. Yeah.
How long were you up there? Or what was the sentence?
The first one, I think I was after getting caught actually in a committal warrant. I was after being sentenced without my presence in the court. I was on the run, like. No, it wasn't even for something stupid now, like, do you know what I mean? But I suppose...
when you're 18 and you're on the run. It's like,
a mad thing, like. I want a mad thing getting pulled out of the bed.
And the talk out of an 18-year-old then, like, when you're on the run.
Yeah, and so
you're
like...
trying to hide from
the bravado.
But I was after getting arrested out of my mother's house, and... I was been drinking the night before, so I was being carted onto Limerick prison, like, with a sick head. And just going in, I remember going in, like, and the fear, even though I knew it was going to be grand, like, I knew I was going to be fine. But when you're going into an environment like that you haven't been in before, it's like, oh God, who am I going to see in here? What's it going to be like? Blah, blah, blah. But sure, once I got in, it was like home from home. That's the only way I can describe it.
And everybody can relate with that. For starting a new job, or you're walking into, your in-laws for the first time.
Joining a new soccer team even.
Yeah, a big thing for me in early recovery was joining a gym and joining a club. I put it off for so long. It's just the fear of the unknown. But when you're going into, you have that. But when you're in a prison environment, it's heightened. You know what I mean? Because it's possible violence, there's possible all these things.
And you're going to probably meet people that you fought with.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, you're going to meet people like that inside there that you're after having run-ins with. You probably have to be talking shit about each other, and, do you know, so that was part of it too.
I'd say 90% of the people, like, with the prison spend, if not all of their time on fight or flight. You know, that's kind of constantly full of adrenaline.
And alert all the time.
Because something...
Do you know who's going to come in?
No.
You hear that there's someone new after coming in,
and it's a horrible way for the body to feel, because that's actually doing a lot of damage to your nervous system, being in that situation constantly, but, if you're living like that on the outside, when you're walking the streets, because you're probably doing the same thing when you're on the streets anyway, watching your back for guards or someone you're fighting with or whatever it may be. It really, really damages the body in so many different ways. It's just, you're knocked out of homeostasis, which is where where you have a balance within the body's nervous system. It's ridiculous, like. Yeah.
And I suppose just with Limerick, like, it was like, there was only like 2 landings there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was only a small prison, women's prison.
It's just a landing. It's just a couple of landings within the male prison.
Yeah. So Limerick prison it's a male prison, really, but there's a couple of landings for the females.
Yeah.
So you have the landing here and the one below, and then you have the wreck, and then you have your yard. And it was it was grand. I remember being up there, and at the time, you could have a bit of crack as well up there, because the lads from the male prison be able to shout over, so you'd be shouting back and forth to one another, or you'd be out the yard sunbathing, and an orange come over the wall, and or a hard boiled egg or something. Yeah. So there was a bit of banter as well, a bit of crack there. And
did you know many people up there?
I did, the girls, yeah.
Was there lots from your own area?
There would have been a few. It was mainly Cork women up there. That's what the prison was really full of, and a few Limerick heads. And then I suppose the dubs would come down from the Docas if they were being punished. Limerick was seen as the punishment jail, so they'd come down then, but it was mainly Cork. But yeah, you do what you can to pass the time in there. Do you know what I mean? You'd have a bit of banter out in the yard, shouting and roaring over the wall, and then you'd be trying to get off to the dentist. It's when I think of it now, ridiculous stuff, trying to get off to the dentist because that was over in the male part, and then you get all dolled up walking through the male part, and no one could see it because they were all locked up. They were all put into your cells or into the cells. So
that's the mentality
when you're 18, 19, it was ridiculous, really.
And, do you know, around that stage of your life, was there did you have any indication of where you were actually going with your life? No. You weren't after hitting a stage in your life at that stage where you said, you know what, this isn't working anymore for me? No, that came later, but at that point, at that particular time, it was no, I enjoyed the drinking, I enjoyed the drug taking, I enjoyed the partying. Even though there was a lot of trouble in between all of that, there was still the laughs. Do you know what I mean? You still have to laugh. And I wasn't, at that stage, I wasn't nowhere ready. I didn't even know, addiction was something I'd never heard of at that stage. I didn't know anything about recovery, anything like that. So that wasn't part of my world at all. So no, I wasn't. I just thought that was normal, and that was just the way it was going to be. So even though I didn't give it much thought, really, it was I was just kind of going along with it. Yeah. So how long did that madness go on for Gillian, and how did it all stop? Do you know what, that went on? I suppose that started at a very young age, all that madness, and it came to a halt. My last sentence, I'd say, I'd been in and out, and my dad tried to intervene, and I was living with him, and I was living in an unofficial halting site, and that was fine for a while, but then I didn't like that either, because I just wanted to be I suppose a memory came to me there recently, and I was telling James about it. I was about 16 now again at the time, 17. Looking back on it, I can see why I was doing what I was doing. There was a lot of hurt there was a lot of pain there, a lot of emotional pain. No coping skills, absolutely no coping skills. I suppose in my family growing up, you didn't cry. You didn't express any type of a feeling. And you just got on with it. And if you did cry, you probably get a belt for crying. Do you know, this kind of thing? The shit was really hitting the fan, in terms of life or death situations at the age of 16. I was down in another family member. He was a relative, and he wasn't there. He was in hospital, and myself and another couple of family members were there. And we were taking all his tablets with no awareness now of what we were actually taking, and we took a lot of them. I just passed out. We all did, really. And only that my dad was looking for me that night. He was around the place in the lorry looking for me. I was dead. He met one of the lads that we used to hang around with, because we used to be out at the church. That was our kind of spot. Gran, that was our spot. And he met one of the lads that we used to be up there with us. And he told my dad where we could possibly be. And my dad came down looking for us. And banging at the door. There was no answer. I was out cold on the floor. And he was looking in the window and spotted me on the ground. Kicked in the door. Grabbed me, put me into the lorry. My brother was there as well, my other brother. Phoned an ambulance. They were I was unresponsive. I wasn't responding at all. The others were. They were kind of groggy, so he got an ambulance for them. Got me down to the hospital, and I was pumped out.
I couldn't remember days. There was days in my life gone I couldn't remember. I was so out of it. My 2 legs got burnt. I didn't even realise it. So for weeks after that, my dad had to take me up to the orthopaedic to get my legs dressed. I was left with nasty scars, but they're gone now. They're after fainting. Blisters with that size out my legs from getting burnt. And only that he came down that night, and only that a friend of mine had said where we were, I'd have been dead. Because my body, like, I was only 16, and as I said, I was only a small, little, frail, skinny thing, like, so I wouldn't have been able for it. So it was getting bad at that stage, do you know what I mean? When it came to a halt, then I was in, for my last sentence, I'd say I was 20, 21. And I started seeing things a bit different. I wanted something different. So I started going to school, and I'd no junior cert now because I was after leaving school early. And started, I suppose, going to cooking classes and, you know, kind of engaging in the school.
In the prison.
In the prison. And I started practicing, I suppose, learning. Studying, that's the word I'm looking for. Studying for my junior cert. So I started studying English and maths. And everything was going grand. Doing my cooking classes and whatever else was going on. But I'd still go from cell to cell and have the bands, you know, the chats with the girls. And I started doing a lot of training in the prison. Fitness, got into health and fitness in a big way. So I was thinking, when I get out now, I'm going to pursue that. That's what I'm going to do. And that was my plan. And then the worst news of my life came, you know. I had another family member in the prison with me at the time. And we got the news that my sister had died. My oldest sister, who would have been very close to, I would have travelled to the end of the earth for her. Do you know what I mean? I adored her. And I remember being down the laundry. And there was a probation officer and a priest there, and an officer came over. And I put my washing into the machine, and they called me and gave me the news, and it was the worst day of my life, really. I ran up the stairs and went into the other family member that was there. And sure, like, we were inconsolable, really.
It was good that you had somebody with you.
It was, but it wasn't at the same time. I was coming to the end of my sentence. I was due to be released not long after this, like. So the person that I was in the cell with wasn't. She was there on circuit court warrants. So she wasn't going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? So we got the news anyway, and showed a lot of it as a blur. I remember Miss Kylie, she was an officer up there. She was sound. I wasn't even smoking at the time. I was off fags for a couple of years and all at that stage. And she handed me 20 fags and got out for the funeral. I was after applying for TR for the couple of days for the funeral. And I remember the priest saying to me, "Look, Gillian, if you come back, we'll have you out sooner than your release date." So I got out for the couple of days for the funeral, and I came back. The only reason I came back is because there was another family member in the cell, and that's being honest. And then soon after that, I was released, and everything just went downhill. Like, I suppose I was released into society with no coping skills.
Especially, you know, after the death of a family member, somebody you were very close to as well.
Yeah, because the thing was, where you see one of us, you'd see another 3 or 4 of us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was always 3 or 4 of us together. There was never just the one. And like my sister Maria, she was like, I idolised her. She was great crack as well. And after that, the family just seemed to break apart. I don't know what, like, it just, instead of bringing us together, it just, yeah.
And do you know, when you got out, did you pick up the addiction from where you left off, and did it get worse?
I did. It went worse. Got 10 times worse.
So you're after getting out of prison. You've all the issues that you went in there with, but now you're after losing your sister and the trauma of all that. The addiction got worse. How did it come to a head?
So while I was in prison, I linked in with an organisation called the Cork Alliance. Now, when I linked in with them, my thing, you know the way it is inside the prison, going to them or going to this person, going to that person, they get you out sooner. That was my train of thought. So when I met with the Cork Alliance first, that was my train of thought. Go in here now, spill them a load of bullshit and they'll get me out sooner. And I met with them in the prison and they were nice and all of this stuff. So when I got out, after my sister died, out into the big bad world with no coping skills, I went downhill very quickly. The minute I got out the gate, straight into the off licence. That was my first stop, on the bus, down to Cork. And it was just drink, drugs. I remember the funeral. Even at the funeral, like, it was just, I was in a daze. I was just fueled with drink and drugs and not causing no bother to anybody, but just trying to numb. So I came back out then, and this is what I was going back into. My relationship at home wasn't great, so it wasn't even that alone. The environment wasn't healthy. So I went straight into that and became very suicidal, and then picked up the phone and rang the Cork Alliance. To be honest, I only rang them really because I was after getting out. They would have to give me maybe 3 or 4 weeks TR. It was something like that, and I was after missing a sign on up in the prison. So I contacted them and said, look, I'm after getting out. I'm after missing the sign in there. Will you contact the prison? Blah, 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 which they did. And then I went in and I met with them. And I suppose my relationship with them, I had the relationship grew. Mm-hmm. And they were instrumental in my recovery. I suppose they were the only, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to anybody else, but they were the only good thing in my life at that stage. That could give me some bit of guidance, that showed me some bit of love. Because you must remember, we were all very hurt with my family now as well at this stage, and there was none of us knew how to deal with anything, to be honest. So that went on. Jesus, that way of life went on for 12 months, I'd say. Just constant drinking, drugging, fighting, arguing. And it was just a cycle. It just went on, and the suicide attempts came in. And I remember the day of the inquest, because I suppose how my sister died as well, that really affected me. She was found outside Pennies. Do you know what I mean? And
Through addiction,
she died from drinking drugs. And that, even when I say it right now, that still catches me, for somebody to go like that. Yeah. And to leave 7 children behind her. Do you know? She was only 32 at the time. So that whole piece, even in itself, I felt a lot of guilt around that. If I was there, maybe it could have been different. And, and I would imagine we all carried something like that in the family. We all carried some bit of guilt around that. If we were there, it could have been different. She had very bad asthma as well. So, all of those health problems played into her death.
I suppose I just wanted to say something there. You mentioned something about her death, about all of you thinking what could you've done or whatever. That happens to every family. And with me being an addict, James, you probably relate to me. There's nothing you can do for an addict, Gillian.
No, and I know that. Today I know that. But back then, I remember walking through town and I convinced myself, Maria wasn't dead long now. I was actually going off to the Cork Alliance Centre. Even my whole appearance, everything changed at that stage. Everything, I completely, I just didn't care anymore. Yeah. That was the frame of mind. I just did not care anymore. I didn't want to be part of this world anymore. Yeah. There was nothing, as far as I was concerned, there was nothing in it for me. And I was walking over to the Cork Alliance through Patrick Street, and there was this woman going into the chemist, and it was I was looking at Maria. I convinced myself it was Maria, and my heart started racing. I never forget it. My heart started racing. I was kind of looking, is that her? Is that her? And I ran over and followed the woman into the chemist, and I actually went up and I looked into the woman's face. I was convinced it was her. No, obviously it wasn't. But it was I was going through all those stages as well, with drink and drugs and everything else that was going on in my life at that time as well, on top of it. So I started seeing a counsellor through the Cork Lines. Her name was Cora, and an amazing woman, an amazing woman. And it was around, as far as I was concerned, it was bereavement counselling, around the death of my sister. Because you must remember, I actually genuinely saw nothing wrong with what was going on in my life.
It was normal.
It was very normal. Yeah. There was nothing different, do you know what I mean? Apart from my sister was dead. And I started seeing her, and every week I was going in there. It was like I was kind of, yes, I might spend a small bit of time talking about Maria, but then it was like I boxed it off, pushed it away, didn't want to feel anything, I suppose, and was talking constantly about who said this and who said that, and she done that, and I done this, and he said this. It was all, this kind of carry on. This was every week. It was like...
I'm laughing because I spent the first probably 6 or 7 months in therapy inside the prison with a psychologist, the exact same way, up there every week, giving out about everyone around me.
And it was always their fault.
It was and the anger that I had, the anger.
It was everybody, like every time I went in there, it was everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
Whatever happened at the weekend, it was always their fault. That was the way it was. And then I was continuing with my counselling. And then one day I just went in there. And it was just like, the words that came out of my mouth was, my life is unmanageable. My life is completely unmanageable. And at that point, I was worn out from it. I was now, because as I said, like, the suicide attempts came in the day of my sister's inquest. I made a point not to go into the court that day with no drink or drugs in me, so I could hear what was going on. I still to this day couldn't tell you what was after being said and signed there. It was like I went blank. It was like I was never in there. But I do remember sitting on the ledge of the bridge, looking to throw myself in there, with drink knowing me again, like. And this woman, this girl, I don't know who she was to this day, came along, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, "Don't come down off that." And then the guards came, and there was, was there 3 or 4 guards there? One guard wasn't very nice. He was basically telling me to do it, and the others were telling me to come down and look, we'll bring you home. And no, thank God I didn't do it. Maybe that was just a cry for help. I actually didn't know what was going on at that stage in my life.
At that stage, was you were coming to an end, obviously.
Yeah.
I just kind of go back to something I said there a while ago. I said, like, there's absolutely nothing to do for an addict until they're ready, until they know they're ready, because, like, in your situation, you're ready, you're coming, the pain is so unbearable in your life. You have
to be ready. I suppose you have to come to a place in your own life where you just think enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I suppose, fast forward, that's eventually what happened. I was sitting down with this counsellor, Cora, who had previously worked in Table Lodge.
Yeah.
And she was one of the first people, and I have to say this as well, just to acknowledge it. But I was in there one time after, doing a session, and I was crying over my sister or whatever. And at the end of the session, she put her arms around me, and I just froze. I wasn't used to people hugging me or showing me any kind of affection like that. I literally just froze. And she was hugging me. She was like, "You'll be grand, and you mind yourself now for the next few days, and I'll see you again," and blah, blah, blah. And that, all of those small things, some might see it as inappropriate, but it meant so much. At the time I was frozen, but afterwards it felt like someone actually cared. So I when I said that to her anyway about feeling my life was unmanageable, she said, I think you're ready for a treatment centre. And that was when I picked up the phone and rang Table Lodge, and I got an appointment for an assessment. I went down there, done the assessment. Again, a staff member from Cork Lines came down with me. I really needed that support, along the way. I didn't have any family around me. I had nobody literally around me at this point. Went down, done the assessment, and I remember at the time, 50 Cent was after coming. He was coming to Cork, and I was after getting a ticket for him. And I was after being given the date, but it was clashing with my concert for 50 Cent. So that wasn't going down too well at all with me, So I was saying, look, if I have 50 Cent, the concert is coming up. If I come in now, well, the date that they were giving me, will you let me out then for tonight for 50 cents? I'll come back after the concert is over. And they were looking at me stupid. Phil, the woman that was there at the time, she was like, you can't do that. We can't. I was like, but you can test me. You can test my earrings. And they were like, no, you can't do that. I was like, look, well, we'll put the bed on hold until 50 cents is over and I'll come back. That was on a Friday. That assessment took place. On the Monday, I was on the phone begging them for my bed. And I remember Phil saying to me, she's long gone now at this stage, but I remember Phil saying to me, but what about this 50 cent fella? Do you know, I was like, I actually don't care about him, I need the bed. So I got in there, and while I was there, the concert was on and all of this stuff. And I'm so glad that I made, that I had, first of all, that I had that experience over the weekend, because it was an off weekend I was after having. That again brought me to the place where I was, you're right, you're going to do something here, you're going to die. This is the reality of it, like.
And you know what? That's a good point, because we get a lot of people contacting us. They want help. So we're not therapists. We can only tell them what we did and see if that works for them. But sometimes people want the recovery. And we say, look, my life is unmanageable. I'm full of addiction. My wife is throwing me out. My kids, blah, blah, blah. I need help. And we say, you know what? Try residential treatment. Oh, I tried it before. It's not for me. If you want recovery, you'll make the sacrifices and you'll just fucking do it. Get rid of the excuses. If you have to get rid of the excuses, whether it be 50 cents, that's just another example. You know, you have to get rid of the excuses. Recovery has to be the number one thing. Because without recovery, nothing else is possible.
And I remember when the day came for me to go into Table Lodge, like I was literally skipping down the road because I just see it at that point. It was like, this is my way out. This is my chance. This is my way out. I could see that there was some bit of hope there. And I remember going in there and like full of fear.
But you were at the end. Like the reason I know you were at the end, like towards the end of James's addiction, yours, mine, it was all about suicide.
Oh, it is. That's where it all ends up.
And listen, James, we don't say this to scare anybody. No. Any family member that have a family member in addiction that are completely destroyed and they don't know what to do. We don't say this to frighten them that's coming down the line or anything like that. We're only speaking about our own experiences, which are quite similar, and mine was the same. I remember walking out of court and wanting to just walk over and jump into the river. You know, every time I used at that stage, I didn't want to wake up, and I was taking large quantities of drugs, and passing out, and you know, that's how it was, you know, and fortunately, I went down your route as well. I went to the doctor. I asked the doctor I told him I wasn't well, and he put me on meds, and he also got me to see a counsellor, and from there on, I managed to get myself into Table Lodge as well. I hadn't the foggiest clue what was going on. I thought I was going in there, and I was going to be coming out, and I could go home, and I could go out on the weekend with my wife, and go home and have a drink, normal. Things changed in there. My life just changed. I had no awareness still. I hadn't a clue what they were talking about, because intellectually I wasn't able to understand a lot of the stuff they were talking about.
But when you're down there, like they're talking, like I remember being down, and I don't mean to call over you down to me, but I remember being down there. It was like a nursery. That's the only way I could describe it, because we were like a load of children running around the place.
But do you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
It was actually like a nursery, a preschool. We were all running around the place. We didn't clue what was going on around us, and we were all half mad from the addiction. We were mental, like.
It makes a lot of sense, because what they say is what I've heard and read, is when people do stop drinking, they go back to the age that they started, you know. And so it makes a lot of sense when you think like that, because the mind is gone as well. The mind is racing at that time.
People that are in the cycle of addiction in prison, they don't mature mentally at all. Like I was a teenager from the age of 15 to 28. It was only when I was 28 when I come out of treatment to start doing a bit of personal development. But then I kind of grew up, you know, and matured.
I'm the exact same. I think I might have even about 7 or 8 because it was that young, that stuff, you know. I always felt like it was the child in a conversation. Like I could be talking to, even when I was in prison, I would walk around the yard and I was talking to the lads, and I felt so inferior, you know, if that's the right word.
Inferior,
You know, it was like I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know how I could even put a sentence together. That's constantly.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I struggled with a lot of that as well, especially early recovery. that would have, I would have battled with a lot of that kind of stuff. But I suppose just kind of fast forward a bit.
Did you do aftercare?
I went into Table Lodge. I was also treated at that point as well for an eating disorder, so I was in there for like the 5 weeks or something. And then I came out and...
Can you touch off that a small bit there, the eating disorder, if you'd like that?
The eating disorder, I suppose that was always... I'm just mindful of the time now as well.
No, you're fine.
Am I okay with the time? The eating disorder, I suppose that would have always been there on some level. Body dysmorphia as well. I suppose when I was very young, I was very thin. Like, there was no saying I wasn't. And I used to be looking at other people and I used to be thinking, I need to put on weight, even though I couldn't put on weight. So then I'd start wearing pantses underneath my jeans to make me look like I had more weight on my legs. And it was just all of that kind of stuff. And I know there's probably a lot of females out there can relate to that on some level. But with the eating disorder then, I would binge, I would restrict, I would binge, compulsively overeat, purge.
Yeah.
That was all going on.
Bulimia.
Yeah.
Yes, bulimia. It was bulimia. And and I know you had somebody on recently as well, Lorna, who spoke very well. I really enjoyed her podcast. I could relate to a lot of things. Situations different, but it's a disease really. And I was that person that thought the doctor was jealous of me because the doctor was telling me you're on the weight, you're seriously on the weight. But I had it in my head. I just kept going, kept exercising, kept restriction. And in the meantime, in the middle of UCC with all of this as well going on. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was like that part of it was really difficult. That part of my disease, the eating disorder, was really difficult.
Is that something that followed you in early recovery when you got out?
Yes, it did. It did follow me in early recovery. I was consumed with myself. I was consumed with how I looked and how I thought people saw me, and today none of that matters what people think really.
It's just that feeling of inferiority, like what Timmy spoke about.
Yeah,
It's just
I did feel that
low self-esteem that is ingrained in nearly everybody that's in addiction.
Yeah.
That like everybody, like the behaviours that the things we did, the drugs we take, the people we become very ashamed of that.
Yeah.
And we feel worthless because, we're stigmatised as well because we are, or scumbags, junkies, these are the labels that we hear and we internalise all this and we feel like shit and and it takes a lot of work to break out of that and to just blossom in recovery. It takes a lot of work, doesn't it? It
does. And I tell you now, and I will honestly say, hand in my heart, recovery has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. When I came out of Table Lodge, I went into renewal. There was a very short space between Table Lodge and renewal, which I'm blessed. I'm so blessed that I had those options available to me. I went into renewal and then I went on to sober house for a couple of months. So that was the first time I suppose I really experienced some kind of a structure in a home, let's say.
For people that don't know, Table Lodge is a 28-day residential treatment.
Longer if you're being treated for an eating disorder, it's like 5 weeks or something.
Then renewal is like an aftercare, but it's a step down secondary residential treatment. 3 months. And then sober house is independent living in a house share that's still attached to the treatment process.
Where the staff from
So you did the whole hog?
I did the whole hog. And as I said, I'm blessed that was available to me.
Were you going to meetings and stuff as well?
Oh yeah, meetings were part of my everyday life.
It's a good system.
That's a good system. It was I suppose when I was in renewal and when I was in sober house, we had to go to Farm Forest and do a course over there. And I'm still very good friends with one. She's actually one of my best friends. One of the girls that I was actually up in renewal with, Dee. So Heidi, if you're watching. And we were all up in Farm Forest together. When I think back of it now again, the mentality, and communications, and she often bring it up to this day. We were in doing communications, and I had to read something out loud or write something, and I got a panic attack because I had no confidence. As far as I was concerned, I was thick.
Yeah.
And I had to read something or write something, and I got such a panic attack, I ran out the door.
And that was your first step into education?
Yeah, getting a bit of... my first... it was and it wasn't. I suppose that was the first time really with the proper structure around education.
You did your junior cert through Limerick
But I done my junior cert, and I hope Maria Walsh don't mind me saying this part.
Well, she does watch the podcast.
So hi Maria, if you're watching. But when I was after I suppose I was studying for my junior cert in, Maria Walsh was another person that was part of my recovery early days. When I was doing, studying for my junior cert, of course, when I got out, sure, my sister was dead and all of that went out the window. I didn't want to know nothing about a junior cert. And I remember I was after linking in with Maria Walsh as well, and she was very good to me now as well, to be fair, you know. She was trying to get me into little courses, little hairdressing courses and all of this kind of stuff. And she'd take me for lunch and stuff. And I remember the junior cert was on that morning down in Rockies, you know, Rockies.
Yeah.
And she was after ringing me. I was inside in bed, like, with a sick head. That's been out the night before. And she was like, you know, the junior cert. And I was like, I'm not going. She was like, you are going. I was like, I'm not going. I'm sick. I'm not going. Up to the house, she came in the car and brought me down. And I went, a sick head, a load of 15, 16-year-olds in there, and I sat in between them and done my 2 subjects.
Maria Walsh works for IASIO. It's like employment and training for probation service. Yeah. And Father Rocks is outreach in city centre. Yeah. Just for the people that don't know. Just for the people that don't know. And so I suppose very early, more so I suppose addiction / recovery, Maria Walsh would have been around that as well. And I still talk to Maria Walsh today. She's a great person. Yeah. Which I suppose I then, where was I there? No, sorry. You were doing the course in Farm Forest.
Doing the course in Farm Forest. So that was the first time that I had proper structure in my day, really, in terms of education as well. And then we'd go back to renewal, and I'd have to go then in the evenings and go to meetings, and even that, when I think of that, like going into the meetings with the high boots and me, click, clack, do you know what I mean? Thinking I don't know what I thought I was, really. A whole group of us going and giggling over in the corner. Do you know what I mean?
But you see, listen, this is important as well. In early recovery, right, there's 2 things happen. Somebody gives up the substance or the alcohol or whatever it may be. That's one thing that's very important, and they go to meetings to be kept away from that so they can relate and associate with other people in the room. Yeah. But there's a vital aspect of that as well, which is the behaviours. You have to also change the behaviours.
You have to address the behaviours, absolutely.
And no, that's only a small thing.
That's only a small thing, but we'd all be going in there as a group. Yeah. And it could be a meditation. For instance, now over in the Sacred Heart, that's a meditation meeting. The meditation would start. We're in and out to the toilet with the boots in us. So the floors, you would hear everything. So you're click, clack, in and out. Then we're giggling over in the corner. Like we were actually like a load of children. Yeah. But again, it was Jesus, these were very early days, and that worked for a period of time, going to the meetings and going for the coffees and all of this stuff. And then I started hitting the wall again. Do you know, I was doing, I suppose, and just to say, I was still doing one-to-one counselling, and I was doing everything that I possibly could to help me to get better. But I was insane. My mind was gone, And then I suppose I came to another stage in my life where the meetings weren't enough anymore. I was going to, and the counselling certainly wasn't enough anymore for me. I was also doing personal development courses with SHEP.
Social health.
Yeah.
Education.
Yeah. So I suppose that's like another form of a meeting almost, but it's facilitated.
You're doing a lot of personal development, I've
done a lot of personal development from the day I came into recovery. Through the years, I've done a lot of personal development. And as I said, I was going into meetings, and it came a point where I just didn't feel like I was getting better anymore. I needed something else. And that's where the program came in, the 12-step program. Got myself a sponsor and sat down and done the program with him. And it was life-changing. It really was, because even up until that point, I was consumed with myself. It was all about me. Yes, I was turning up to college. Yes, I was trying to do all these things to better my life. I was doing my degree. And I just didn't start off with that. I had to do other little things, which were huge at the time for me, to build me up to that place to get to UCC. I mean, me going to UCC, none of my family went to UCC. I don't think any of my family have a junior cert. I haven't got my siblings now. Do you know what I mean? So that was UCC was just that was nowhere near where I was coming from. So I started off with smaller courses, then went to the College of Commerce and done applied psychology and social studies, and then progressed into UCC, where I done my degree in Newton Community. But in the middle of all of that, I felt like there was something missing. I was missing something. And it came, I suppose, I heard a man at a meeting one night talking. The man must have been 76 or something at the time. And I was having fierce difficulties with relationships, of how I was in relationships. And he quoted something from the 12 and 12. The primary fact we fail to recognise is our complete inability to form a true partnership with another human being. Yeah. And it was like lightning hitting me. So I approached him afterwards and we had a chat about it, and he became my sponsor, and he's still my sponsor to this day, Paddy. And
shout out to Paddy.
Yeah. Shout out to Paddy. Don't know if he watches the podcast, but anyway, he took me through the steps, and I can't actually describe what went on or what happened, but something changed. And I remember going through the program, and we were coming, I think it was the 4th or the 5th step. But it was talking anyway, like he was reading the book to me, and it was around being selfish and self-centeredness and all of this. And I was identifying with it so much that I got vicious, angry, and I caught the book. Now, the man was in his 70s. I caught the book and I slammed the book down on top of the table, and I said, "This is a load of fucking bullshit." Because I was identifying with it. I didn't like what I was feeling. And I got up, and he was just kind of like, This is all I know how to do. This is all I know how to work with you. I don't know what else to do with you, like. And I stormed out, and I got to the door, and I just turned around, and I walked back in, and I sat down. And I said, "Look, I'm sorry." I knew if I walked out that door,
that's it,
I was in trouble. When he was reading that piece to me, it was hitting a nerve. And that was the turning point for me. That story that I've just said was a turning point in my recovery, because I continued with the program. I continued with my meetings. I continued doing everything that I was doing. I got myself through college. And I came out the better for it. Do you know, all of that stuff. And I always say to this day, look, my own sponsor always says there's many ways to go out of recovery, whatever way suits you. Do you know what I mean? But I know for me, without the 12 steps in my life, without sitting down and doing that program with somebody that had that spiritual experience, I don't think I'd be where I am today. I wasn't, I couldn't, I was single for a long time in recovery as well, for years in recovery. Because I just couldn't be in a relationship. I had to build that relationship with myself, and the program was a big part of that.
And for a lot of people, it can be counselling, it can be meditation.
That's what I'm saying. It can be like, that's it. It can be anything.
But you have to try everything.
But for me,
try them all.
Yeah.
Do you know what the massive part of that is? Trust. You know, trust in another human being. Yeah. You know, when you've experienced circumstances like you have, and I have, and James has, like, trust is a very, very hard thing to give to another human being. And in my own story, it's when I started to give that trust to other people and just trust them that they'll never harm me or do anything wrong to me. That's when I started to open up a little bit more, and that's when my life also changed, like the relationship I have with my wife today. Yeah. You know, trust.
Well, you have to have that. You have to be able to feel trust.
It feels, I don't want to sound a bit soft now or whatever, but I'll say what I have to say. It's like, it was the best feeling I've ever experienced in my life, to be able to trust another human being with your own life. Not just your own life, that they always have the right intentions for you, and they always have your back. That you don't have to have your own back all the time anymore. You can speak to this person and tell them whatever's going on for you, and they have your back. They're not going to judge you. They're going to love you the same way. Yeah. You know,
I think in the environments when we were in addiction and prison and that, it's very hard to trust anybody, and like you said a while ago, you're always heightened that what's the next thing going to happen, do you know? But when I was in St. Francis Farm, I remember I was in the residential side of it for about 7 weeks, didn't open my mouth known the group. I used to sit there, the best buy, you know, they go around, you know, because every week or every group somebody's getting grilled. And I always kind of
kept the head down. Like.
Yeah, and eventually he came to me, he says, "And how are you today, James?" I'm grand by, you know yourself, you know, thinking that he move on now to the next. He says, "Sure, you could actually go away there sort of days, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with you, you're cured. I knew, like, if I was gone that day, I was using that day. And it's just, you know what it's about? It's about leaving yourself vulnerable, opening up, and not always having it in your head that if you open up or if you leave yourself vulnerable, it's going to be used against you. Because in the real world, it won't be. And there are good people out there, but in our social context back then, we were just surrounded by negativity. But in the world really isn't like that. And, the world can be a good place and there are good people out there, but it takes a lot to work through that,
It's when you, in your own personal journey, become the person that is the person you want to be around, like the happy, the full of life's energy person. When you become that person, life will become a place of where it's just good instead of and not negative like the way it was before. And your whole perception of how everything is around you changes.
And once that negative mindset is shifted, all of a sudden positive things start happening for you. You start meeting good people, getting jobs and courses, and things start going really well because you start attracting that positivity. Can I just, you touched on something there. You went to UCC, you went to the College of Commerce, you went to UCC. For anybody that's in prison, because possibly they're watching this in the Dorcas or in Limerick, and people will be able to identify with you, or maybe there's traveller girls watching it. Like 1% of travellers have third level education. That's a tiny number of people compared to settled. What was it like for you in university? What kind of challenges did you come up against? Did you have lower confidence going in there? Or did it grow as you went? What was that process like?
I suppose for me, just even before university, really, even going to the College of Com, I struggled the whole way through it with my confidence. Like Sheila, the Cork Lines, who you both know.
She was our first guest on the podcast.
She's an amazing woman, and I love that woman. I do.
She was instrumental in three of her.
She held my hand through everything. She was there for everything. It didn't matter whether it was a Saturday or a Sunday morning, whatever was going on. And if I needed a friend, she was there. And I suppose going to college, I just didn't believe in myself. I really didn't. And I needed a lot of support, a lot of emotional support, really. And she was one of the people that was there. I remember going up to UCC and looking around me thinking, I don't belong here at all. I remember my first day in UCC, I ran out of the classroom and I rang Sheila and I was like, I can't stay here, I have to go. And she was like, breathe, just stay for half an hour and then see how you are. And that's the way it was throughout. The lecturers in UCC and in the teachers in College of Com as well were great. But the lecturers in UCC, they were fantastic, really. I got they really made me feel part of university. And I was up there with a friend of mine, Catherine Toomey, and she made my experience so much easier because of the laughs that we had together.
Churchfield woman as well.
She's up the road from me, yeah. I tell you now, she's salt of the earth, a great time for her. And the laughs that we had, we were like two children in the classroom. But got the work done when the work needed to be done, do you know what I mean? Applied ourselves. But she did get me through that because, look, there was a lot going on as well that's not for the podcast that I'm not going to discuss here. Do you know what I mean? There was lots of other stuff going on that I don't even know how I got through UCC, to be totally honest. And people that know me know exactly what I'm talking about. So I really struggled with it. I really felt like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't belong there. And even after UCC, I felt like that. Do you know, graduating from UCC, it was Sheila that was by my side and my niece Aoife. And on the morning of my graduation, I was crying because it was just so much. I was overwhelmed, and there was other stuff going on too. And I never felt worthy. I never felt like that I was worthy enough to be in UCC, that I was worthy enough to get my degree. I put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into that degree, I can tell you that now. It did not come easy. When I look at James, because as everybody knows, he's my husband, when I looked at how he sailed through, and I don't mean that now, you had your challenges too, I don't mean that, but you were more confident in your own abilities, whereas that wasn't for me. Every step of the way was a nightmare really at times for me, do you know. And I'm not saying that being dramatic at all. But I'm so glad that I continued to push through, because there was times I was like, I have to get, I'm not able for this at all. Like, who do I think I am? Do you know what I mean? Who do you think you are? Like,
You know, we all had that imposter
do you know,
syndrome,
it was
don't
like,
we? Yeah.
But I remember I was after applying for the social care out in CIT and the Newton community, and I got offered both of them. And I was after meeting with I was like, what's the difference here now with the two of these? So I was after ringing UCC, and I ended up meeting with Mihal O'Hare. Lovely man again. Like, I've met some lovely people along the way. And I sat down with him and we had a conversation, and I suppose in a way, when I think about it, he was pitching UCC to me almost. And I went with UCC in the end, and I'm so grateful today. Like, the opportunities, and I suppose that's what I really want to get out there today. The opportunities that I have today, because of all the groundwork that I've done. I had to remove myself from everything that I knew when I came into recovery. Family, so-called friends, acquaintances, everyone. I was literally on my own. I remember being my first year in recovery, Christmas time. I was in sober house on my own. No family around me, no nothing. And I grinded it out. They were the sacrifices I made to get to where I am today.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've done since you've graduated from UCC?
Yeah, so graduated from UCC. My first job was working as a traveller health worker in West Cork. And then I started working with children in care, residential. And then came the dream job, the Cork Alliance. So from being a service user to being a staff member, like, it was amazing. And the experience I got there really kind of built me as a professional, because I was landed into the prisons. I was in there assessing people, as you know, and I won't go too much into it now because I know time is running out, but going back into those environments where, like, I was going to Cork prison, I'd be visiting people, family, whatever, as a child, and then going into the new prison as a member of the Cork Alliance, a staff member. It was a fantastic experience, I have to say, from the point of view of how I was received by the staff up there, the officers, even the people serving their sentences. But I remember when I got that job, like, this had never been done before. Like, this was all new in Cork prison, so this showed how they were moving forward with their thinking, that they were going to have somebody in there with convictions. So Peter O'Brien, the assistant governor, came down my first day on the job down to the Cork Alliance to meet me and congratulate me on getting the position, and was very encouraging and very supportive, and really, really made me feel like that if I was experiencing any challenges within the prison, that I could go and speak to him. No, thank God I didn't. Everything was fine. So that, I suppose, that was kind of a huge thing. And the other huge thing for me was going into Limerick prison. That was even bigger, because I was going back into a prison that I had one service sentencing. And I was on the landing where I was told my sister was dead.
They said it was very triggering. It
was very triggering. I came out of there, even in there, my body was reacting. And when I came out of there, you know, I was a bit shaken from it, just because I was getting the flashbacks, and I was looking at the wreck, and it was my home once upon a time. So I've been very blessed with the opportunities that I've had.
What other prisons were you in?
I was in the Midlands prison, and I was in Portlaoise prison. And I have to say, again, across the board, I've had very positive experiences working. I wasn't in the Midlands prison or Portlaoise as a prisoner, I was a staff member. But great working relationships up there, like sitting down, I suppose, the moment for me really where I was like, oh my God, like, is this actually happening? Where I'm sitting down with senior management in the prison, governors and then senior IPS representatives, do you know what I mean? And discussing people's cases and being feeling like, oh my, they're actually trusting me here, do you know? And even in Cork, like when I was in Cork prison, when I was working there was another family member down there, like, and it didn't matter. That was never kind of used against me or anything like that. So it was a very positive experience overall. I'm gone from there now.
It helped with your self-esteem and confidence as well.
It did. It really built me. I have to say, on a professional level, because I was in the deep end, and it was sink or swim. Do you know what I mean?
It's probably a very tough environment for confidentiality, boundaries, and all these things. So it really helped you grow professionally.
Yeah, it's absolutely it did. So that was a great time that
How long were you there?
I was there for 3 years. And then I moved I'm working within education now, in outreach. With young people, I suppose, that's no longer engaged in mainstream education. And I enjoy that, you can have to laugh, while getting the work done, of course. Yeah.
I heard you married a hunk then.
That's it. Yeah, I got married in between all that. Yeah. So...
Life turned out well for you.
Life turned out very well.
It took a lot of work. But there's nothing to say that a girl, a woman or a boy watching that was in a similar situation, yourself or me or Timmy, they can do it too. With the help of the likes of the Corks Alliance, the likes of Sheila, Maria Walsh, counsellors, ANA, SHEP, do all these courses, the meditation, the education, do it, go out and experience life. Use the supports that's available, and when you use the supports, put your left foot, put the next foot right, do the next right thing, as they say in recovery. If you think that the task is almighty and you'll never get there, do what you can do today, and we do, as I say, day at a time.
And that's all you can do, is keep it in today. Yeah. You literally have to keep it in today. I remember when I'll wrap up there now, but I remember when I came into recovery first, I always heard people sharing, and they were 2 years clean that day, and I'd be like, oh, I wish I was like them now.
I know.
Or people that were celebrating 10 years, I'd be like, oh my God, I wish I was like them. And I got there one day at a time.
Yeah. Do you know what you celebrate today? The closer you get to feeling love for yourself.
Yeah.
That's my celebration, is the closer I get to feeling good about who I am as a person, and the closer, the more love I have for myself and my kids and my wife. That's my recovery today. It's not about the actual timeline, but the timeline is kind of the separation from the actual experiences and stuff like that, because time is a great healer, and we all know that. But recovery for me today is all about how I feel about Timmy. I've got to go through some really difficult situations in my personal life, and then it'll be really, really, really tough, But let me tell you this: them tough situations make you a really, really strong person.
You're resilient.
Yeah.
I remember I was about a year in recovery, and didn't really know what I was doing with myself, to be honest. And then I started going out with Gillian. And
look at the man he is today from it.
But I ended up doing the 12 steps with her encouragement, because I disregarded that, really helped me maintain the recovery. I did the courses she did. I didn't, education at college was not on my radar, Timmy, yourself, we didn't think about that at all. No. It was not until I started going out with Gillian and I could identify with her story, and she had been through UCC, that then all of a sudden this becomes this is something I could do too, And Gillian used to always say to me, you have a head on your shoulders. You would actually do well in college. You're smart. There's something different about you. The way you talk and everything. You should say that. You have a head. And that was really how I ended up going through education. And obviously, everybody knows. I did well in education and all that. And all the good that has come from it. So, thank you very much.
Everybody needs a bit of encouragement along the way. We all need it on some level. And I suppose, and we will wrap up this. It's important for people to see that people from their communities can do it, are doing it, so therefore they can do it with that encouragement. I
suppose it's all about Gillian asking for the help, as James said, will go, but meaning that you really want help, because if you're somebody that's just
any
looking for it,
to me, you go to any length for it,
and you're not going to stick to it, you're not just wasting your time, you're wasting somebody else's opportunity,
and you'll do more damage along the way.
So just really, really look at it and just go for it. Yeah. Just go for it. We've said it a lot of times. Just go for it.
There's loads of support out there for people.
If people want to contact you, you're on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter.
Yeah, so we'll leave your link in the description of the video. Thanks a million for coming on.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Gillian.
me.
Thank you very much.
It's been
Thanks,
great,
guys.
and I think it'll help a lot of people and be very informative for others. And it's great to have you on. Thanks, Rowan, as always. Thanks, Timmy, and thanks to everybody that watches, everybody that donates on the Patreon. You make it all possible. We're always looking for more people to join the Patreon, Timmy and me. So if you want to help us out and donate a couple of euros once a month, you can do that in the description in the video. Simple link. And and even if you can't do that, that's okay too. We still provide the videos every week. So we see you all next week.
Thank you.
Good luck.